Good evening and salutations, my soap opera fans. So, as the title suggests, or I'm kind of working on the title, but diversity with soap operas and the problem with that, and why, I'm going to be honest, I don't think that's ever going to really change anytime soon. Here's the thing when a lot of people talk about diversity, including James, a lot of people always think they're talking about how there's not enough people of color on soap operas, right? And this includes all four of them. And to be honest, when I actually did sit there and look at some of the numbers, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of a problem. So on that level, I do agree. Hell, Y&R, I think, has three people of color, I think. And B&B is the same thing. But here's the thing. It's not just there's not enough people of color on these soap operas. There's not enough people of Asian descent. There's not enough people of Latin descent. And this is where we get into the bigger problem. There's not really a fix for that, right? Because at the end of the day, somebody's going to wind up losing. Let's just sit there and say, for sake of instance, they put more black people on all the shows. Okay, then what about the Latin people? What about the Asian people? What about the Indian people? Hell, actually, tell you the truth, now I think about it, I can't sit there and think of one person that is of Indian descent. And that's the problem. Nobody wins. Everyone loves to sit there and talk about there's not enough this, there's not enough that, there needs to be more diversity. I remember way back when you had Supergirl on. And I was on Facebook, which was probably a mistake. And this woman was like, oh, see, they don't got no sisters on there. That wasn't meant to be like stereotyping anyone, but I sat there and I said, and I was like, okay, well, one, this is just the first season, but two, did you see any Asian people on the show? But yet, I didn't sit there and see you say anything about that, because that's always the problem. People love to sit there and talk about how there's not enough of what they look like, but they never bother to sit there and think about any of the other groups. Because, I mean, let's be honest, for the most part, it's usually about me, 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 me. I'm the center of the universe, yada, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And don't get it twisted. Okay, I am not ignorant enough to not realize that for a very long time, that people of color have not been represented in Hollywood the same as our counterparts. I think that's pretty obvious. But there's a much larger part. Because, yeah, as we move forward and as TV shows and movies and things of that nature do wind up getting better, because honestly, to tell you the truth, I would love to sit there and one day just wake up and the conversation isn't about we need more of this, we need more of that. It should be the standard. Let's just be honest. It should be the standard for every show, every movie, positions, or whatever. It should be the standard where it shouldn't even be a conversation. We're in 2020, 2024, 2024. I don't see any flying cars, but that's beside the point. And yet we're still having the same conversation. And we're going to keep having the same conversation. And even as we do sit there and get better, there's always going to be a problem because there's always going to be a group that's left out. So there's not really a solution. That's why I generally don't tend to talk about race situations, not just because it's a sensitive conversation and after a while I just start to get a headache, but more because there's no solution about it. Yeah, we can always sit there and keep the conversations going, and that's great, but it just turns into a circle and it doesn't lead us anywhere. You know, there's always going to be a group that's going to be left out. And when you talk about representation, there's a larger issue than just race. There's sexuality. there is disabled, disabilities and stuff like that. And that's not something that even really gets brung into the table often. Not really. So at the end of the day, no one is ever going to really be happy with getting what they want in this industry. Yes, you can sit there and push for it and you can sit there and get progress. But for every push that you get one group represented, they're going to leave another two or three groups out. I mean, honestly, tell you the truth, when you think about it, it's just math. You can't put every single group in every single color on every single show and every single movie and every single TV show and whatever. It's impossible. So, you know, I know in reality there's really no solution. It's just, I hate to sit there and say it is what it is, and yes, we can always sit there and push for better. But just remember, every time we do push for better, there's always going to be something that's left out that we could have done, that we should have done, and we're not doing it because of X, Y, and Z. And yeah, I'm not sitting there saying that we need to be perfect, and yeah, we do need to sit there and do a lot better. Because again, I was sitting there looking at the math and, looking at the lack of diversity when it comes towards people of color. And, well, honestly, tell you the truth, when you can sit there and count how many people, how much representation towards each of these soaps is on one hand, and I don't mean throughout the entire run. I mean within the current season, the current show, the current whatever that we got going on, how many you can sit there and count on one hand. Yeah, it's bad. Well, I'll sit there and leave this question in the chat. What do you think that could be better represented? Like, what do you think the solution could be towards this whole thing? That's what I generally want to sit there and know. What do you think that the solution could sit there and be? Because I don't really have any. I don't really have any. And, I sit there and I watch James all the time, and he's always sit there talking about this needs to be represented and gay rights and everything like that, which is, I'm not sitting there saying he's wrong, but then it just gets right back into that same circle. And so while he sits there and talks about how it's very important for this push to push for this and push for that, and he's an activist, and this, that, and the third, what's the solution? Because honestly, to tell you the truth, and it's not just him, I hear from a lot of different other creators, but yet I don't really hear a solution. But then people want to sit there and come at me and sit there and say, well, as a black person, you got to sit there and do this. And as a black person, you should be sitting there doing that. And it's like, okay. And yeah, I can do that. But then there's no solid solution. And honestly, to tell you the truth, yes, I can sit there and be like, like I said, I look at the numbers, it ain't good, right? While I can sit there and push for more black people on the show, I can also sit there and push for more Spanish people on the show and Asian people on the show, and the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. And we can't put every single race and ethnicity and sexuality and, what you identify as, and you just can't do it. It's just not realistic. As much as people want to sit there and talk about this, that, and the third, there are certain things that are just not realistic. So next time you sit there and think I'm being very passive aggressive about this stuff, I'm not. I do think about this, and I also sit there and think, well, what's the solution? I don't have an answer for that, but if you do, let me know in the comment section below.